She pointed right at my face in front of everyone and said, "This isn't your home." I just stepped into the kitchen, carrying the same pie recipe my mom taught me, when Tanya, my dad's new wife, cut through the air like a knife. Her voice was loud, her tone was final, and every eye at that Thanksgiving table turned on me. That house, I grew up in it. I scrubbed those floors, cried in that hallway, and slept in the basement when I was broke. She moved in last year, and suddenly acted like I was the outsider. I didn't argue, I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just walked out, and 3 months later, I came back with a deed in my hand. Because I bought the house. In cash. I still remember the way the sunlight used to hit the kitchen tiles in the morning. That soft, golden light that made everything feel warmer, even when the world outside felt cold. That kitchen, our kitchen, was my sanctuary growing up. It was where Mom made pancakes every Sunday, where I studied for finals, where we all danced when Ain't No Mountain High Enough came on the radio. But that light faded the moment Tanya moved in. She came into our lives barely a year after Mom passed. My father, grieving and vulnerable, met her at a networking dinner. She was younger, glamorous in a department store kind of way, and always had something to say. She complimented everyone to their face, and rolled her eyes the moment they turned away. At first, I tried, I really did. I brought her a welcome basket. I complimented her hair, even though it smelled like hairspray and chemicals. But Tanya wasn't interested in building anything. She was interested in replacing. She started by moving things around in the house. The curtains Mom had sewn herself were replaced with beige polyester panels. My mom's antique dishes packed into boxes and shoved into the attic. Even the smell of the house changed from cinnamon and lavender to some harsh vanilla plug-in that gave me headaches. I kept quiet, because Dad looked happy. Or at least, he said he was. Then came the dinner rules. Tanya didn't want old traditions clouding the new beginning. No more Sunday pancakes. No more open-door fridge raids. She started locking the wine cabinet. Started hosting friends who didn't even remember my name. One night, I walked in after a late shift at the school. I was exhausted, starving, and just wanted to heat up leftovers. Tanya stood in the kitchen like she owned it. Her arms crossed, her lips tight. She didn't say hello, just looked me over and said, "You really should start calling before showing up. This isn't your place anymore." I swallowed hard and walked to the fridge anyway. There was nothing inside with my name on it. The lasagna I had made last weekend was gone, replaced by quinoa bowls and detox smoothies I couldn't stomach. I knew something had changed, not just in the house. In him. My dad. He started echoing her phrases. "Emily, you need to move forward. Maybe it's time to get your own space." It was like they were trying to erase me, slowly, one drawer, one memory at a time. But I stayed because I loved that house, because it was still, somehow, the only place that felt like home. Until Thanksgiving, that day. I baked Mom's famous pecan pie. I still had the recipe in her handwriting, stained with vanilla extract and thyme. I walked in, holding that pie like it was a piece of her. The house was full her friends, his friends, Tanya's people. No one greeted me, not even Dad. I stepped into the kitchen, and there she was, Tanya, wearing an apron I'd never seen before, barking orders like a general. She turned to me, eyes sharp, voice louder than it needed to be, and in front of everyone, she said, "Why are you even here? This isn't your home." The room went quiet. All those people, all those stares, and my father. He looked down, said nothing. I stood frozen. Then I placed the pie gently on the counter, turned around, and left. No words, no tears, not in front of them. But in my car I let it out. Grief, anger, betrayal, all of it. I drove for hours that night, thinking of everything I had lost. And somewhere, between mile marker 118 and the gas station in Marietta, I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight her. I wasn't going to beg for space in my own memory. No, I was going to get that house back. On my terms, and this time no one could take it from me. I can still hear her voice echoing in that kitchen. "Why are you even here? This isn't your home." That line didn't just sting, it split something wide open inside me. And the worst part, she said it in front of everyone. My uncles, my cousins, my father. No one said a word. Not a cough, not a chuckle, not a defense. I was the only one standing there with a pie in my hands and 1,000 memories in my chest, while Tanya stood with her chin raised like some self-appointed queen of the house. I placed the pie on the counter slowly. My fingers were trembling, but I didn't let it fall. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Then I turned and walked out, step by step, through that hallway where I once hung finger paintings, past the family photos that no longer included me, out the front door I used to open every Christmas morning. Outside, it had started to drizzle. Cold Georgia rain that soaked you quick. I didn't have an umbrella, just my keys and the sound of my father's silence still ringing in my ears. I didn't drive home right away. I didn't even know where home was anymore. So I drove, miles and miles, past familiar roads, through neighborhoods we used to visit as a family, past the skating rink Mom took me to when I was 10, past the little church with the blue door where she used to sing in the choir. Everything felt distant, like I'd been erased from my own life. I ended up in Marietta, parked in a 24-hour diner's lot. I sat there, wet hair stuck to my face, staring at the wheel like it might offer me an answer. And that's when it happened. The shift. I remembered something my mother once told me. I was 16, crying in our driveway after some girl at school called me pathetic. She cupped my face and said, "You don't win by screaming louder. You win by building something they can't take from you." That's when it clicked. Tanya wanted to erase me, replace me, pretend I never belonged. Fine, I'd give her silence, but not surrender. She could keep playing queen of a house built on lies. I was going to own it. I started that night, still in the car. I pulled out my phone and began researching. I didn't know much about property laws, but I knew how to learn. I bookmarked articles on home deeds, estate transitions, and Georgia foreclosure codes. I signed up for 2 online courses. I stayed up until 4 a.m. reading, until my eyes burned. The next morning, I went home, not to my home, but to the little 1-bedroom apartment I'd been renting quietly for a few months. I hadn't told Dad. I moved out after a string of passive-aggressive confrontations from Tanya that made it clear I wasn't welcome. I took only what I could carry in 2 trips and left the rest in storage. It was supposed to be temporary. But now, that tiny apartment became my war room. By day, I was Ms. Harmon, the soft-spoken middle school English teacher. But by night, I was a woman on a mission. I made spreadsheets, took notes, highlighted case studies of contested properties and quiet title actions. Every Friday, I visited the Fulton County Courthouse to learn how public records worked. That's when I found it. One afternoon, flipping through files in a dusty records room, I saw the deed to our house. It was still in my father's name, sole ownership. No mention of Tanya. I leaned back in the wooden chair and closed my eyes. It wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. I dug deeper. I found that my father had taken out a second mortgage right after marrying Tanya. The payments were inconsistent. Some were late, others missed. The house was at risk. And just like that, my plan crystallized. If the bank foreclosed, it would go to auction. If it went to auction, anyone could buy it. So why not me? I had savings. I'd been frugal my whole life. No fancy vacations, no brand names, just steady discipline. I liquidated a few small investments, called in a favor from a former student who now worked in real estate, and opened an LLC Harmony Redevelopment. Everything I did in silence. I didn't tell friends, didn't post online, didn't even mention it to my closest coworker. I couldn't afford leaks, not now. Weeks passed, then months. Every few days, I'd check the foreclosure notices. I watched my father's address inch closer and closer to that dreaded list. And then there it was. Property, 423 Halstead Avenue, scheduled for public auction. My hand shook as I read the notice. This was it. The house, my house. Mom's kitchen. The upstairs window where I used to read novels with a flashlight. I had one shot. I drove to the auction early, wore a blazer, tied my hair back, used the company name. Nobody gave me a second glance. To them, I was just another investor looking to flip a distressed property. But to me, this was personal. The bidding started low, then rose. I didn't blink. When someone tried to outbid me, I countered with precision. Not too eager, not too slow. Until finally the auctioneer slammed his gavel. Sold to Harmony Redevelopment LLC. I signed the papers, wrote the check, no loan, no strings. I bought that house. In cash. And no one, not Tanya, not my father, not the entire room of strangers had a clue who I really was. But soon they would. After the auction, I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no calls to friends, no Instagram post flaunting the deed. Instead, I sat in my car keys still in the ignition, the folder resting on the passenger seat like a newborn, and just breathed. In, out, in, out. The deed had my company's name on it, but I knew that house was mine. Not because I won an auction, but because I earned every square inch of it. Still, the fight wasn't over. Not yet. There were formalities, paperwork, legal notices, and most of all, timing. You see, I didn't just want the house back. I wanted them to know exactly how Huda took it. But not yet. First, I met with a real estate lawyer. Her name was Jasmine Wynne, sharp as a blade and soft-spoken, like me. She reviewed the transfer documents, smiled, and said, "You did everything by the book. They won't know what hit them." That was the plan. I filed the ownership transfer through the LLC, listed a P.O. box as the mailing address, and made sure all communication went through Jasmine's office. That way, when the official notice to vacate him was issued, it wouldn't have my name on it yet. A few days later, Tanya and my father received the first letter. I imagined the moment clearly. Tanya, in her robe, opening the mail near the marble counter she insisted on installing, her nails painted that sterile salon pink. My father, reading over her shoulder, brows furrowed, confused, then panicked. They would have called the county office. They would have heard the truth. The house had been sold. Not to a stranger. To a company? A company with the power to evict. I waited, quietly. Another week passed. Then Jasmine called. They've lawyered up. Tanya's trying to challenge the foreclosure. But it won't stick. It was clean. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Tanya could scream, threaten, even drag it to court. But the law didn't care about attitude. The mortgage had defaulted. The auction was public. I followed every step. Next came the final warning, a 48-hour vacate order. That was when I made my move. I drove to the house not as Emily Harmon, not as the daughter who used to live there, but as the legal owner. I wore a navy pantsuit, simple makeup, hair pulled back. At my side was Officer Daniels, a local sheriff's deputy assigned to keep the peace. As we approached the front steps, I paused. The roses Mom planted were gone, replaced by some soulless landscaping symmetrical bushes and mulch that smelled like chemicals. I knocked once. Tanya opened the door. Her eyes narrowed instantly. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Officer Daniels stepped forward. "Ma'am, this is a formal notice. You've been legally served with a 48-hour order to vacate the premises. This woman is the registered owner of this property." Tanya blinked. Laughed. Actually laughed. "You're joking. This is a mistake. She's lying." I didn't say a word and just opened the folder and handed her a copy of the deed signed, sealed, notarized. She snatched it from my hand, scanning the pages. Her face twisted. "You set us up, you sneaky little..." Officer Daniels raised a hand. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to remain calm." From inside, I heard my father's voice. "Emily..." He stepped into the doorway, slower than I remembered. Older. Tired. His eyes met mine, and for just a second, I saw guilt. Then he looked away. Tanya stormed off, slammed a door. Somewhere upstairs, I heard drawers being yanked open. I turned to Officer Daniels. "That's all I needed," I said. He nodded. "We'll make sure they're out within 48 hours. Would you like us to change the locks?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, please." As they worked, I walked the perimeter of the house. Everything felt smaller. The yard, the porch, even the sky above. But my resolve bigger than ever. I stepped into the kitchen. The same floor tiles. The same corner where Mom used to hum while stirring soup. And suddenly, tears. not from sadness, from release. This wasn't just a house. It was proof that I could be cast out, humiliated, replaced, and still rise. Not with revenge. With ear precision, I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I bought the damn house. In silence. And now it was mine again. Later that night, I received a text from Jasmine. They've officially left. Keys are in your mailbox. I went back, alone. No music, no lights. Just me and the echo of footsteps on hardwood. I stood in the living room. The room where Tanya once told me I didn't belong. And I whispered, "This isn't your home anymore." The house was mine. Every wall, every creaking step, every chipped cabinet still wearing the scars of my childhood that was mine again. But reclaiming it wasn't just about the legal papers or the keys in my hand. It was about walking back into a place that had spat me out and saying, without words, I never needed your approval, just space to rise. The next morning, I returned early. The air was still thick with dew. The porch smelled like old wood, and for a second, I could hear Mom's humming again. My hand hovered over the doorknob. It was strange. The house was empty now, but it pulsed with memories, some tender, some painful. Inside, there was silence, the kind that presses on your chest. I walked room by room. Tanya's mirror was gone. Her candles, her fake ferns, her live laugh love plaques, every trace of her had been wiped clean. But the house still wore her scent faintly, like a perfume you didn't ask to wear. In the living room, the sunlight pooled exactly where Mom used to keep her rocking chair. I stood there, let the light hit me. Then I said it aloud, "I'm home, Mama." But the moment didn't last. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. I answered. Emily, it was my father. There was something ragged in his voice, hollow. "I'd like to see you." I didn't reply at first. "Please," he added. We met later that afternoon at a nearby diner, the kind with vinyl booths and waitresses who knew your name if you came more than twice. He looked older. Maybe it was the stress, maybe it was shame. "Coffee?" he asked. I shook my head. "I don't need pleasantries. Dad, just say what you came to say." He flinched. "I didn't know she'd say that to you. That night." "She said it," I replied flatly, "and you let her." He looked down, stirred his coffee though it was already cold. "I was lost after your mother died. Tanya gave me purpose, or I thought she did." I let the silence stretch, let it choke him the way his silence once choked me. "I never wanted to lose you," he added. "You didn't lose me," I said. "You gave me away." His eyes welled. That almost broke me. Almost. But then I remembered Thanksgiving. I remembered him looking at the floor while Tanya carved up my dignity. "You let her humiliate me," I said, voice barely above a whisper, "in our home, in front of everyone." "I was weak," he murmured. I nodded. "You still are." He looked up, pain etched in the lines of his face. "I wanted to make it right. I tried to fight the foreclosure." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "You didn't fight for me, but you fought for bricks and drywall." Silence. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Why'd you buy it?" And I said, "Because she told me it wasn't my home. And I don't let people rewrite my story." He blinked. "I wanted to give it back to you," he said, voice cracking. "I don't need it back." I said, "I own it now. There's a difference." He nodded slowly. And then the unexpected. "I'm leaving Georgia," he said. "Starting fresh, I can't fix what I broke here." I didn't cry. Didn't beg him to stay. I just nodded. "Then I wish you peace," I said. When we left the diner, we didn't hug. We didn't shake hands. We just walked opposite directions. That night, I sat in the center of the house, alone. No Tanya. No father. Just me. I lit a candle. Not one of hers. One of Mom's old ones I'd found in a box buried in the garage. Cinnamon vanilla, slightly melted. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I baked Mom's pecan pie. Same recipe, same pan, same love. And as it baked, I opened every window. Let the scent fill every corner. Let the walls remember. Let the silence sing. When it was done, I placed it on the kitchen table. Took one bite. Smiled. Then I took a photo not for Instagram. For me. For proof. Not that I'd won, but that I'd come back. Not louder. Just stronger. And this time, I wasn't asking for space. I was reclaiming it. Months passed. The house was quiet again this time, in the right way. It didn't ache with someone else's perfume or judgmental glances. It didn't echo with slammed doors or whispered insults behind fake smiles. It breathed, like it had been holding its breath for years, and now finally it could exhale. And so could I. I didn't renovate right away. I didn't want to erase every trace just yet. I wanted to understand the bones again, the cracks in the hallway where I'd once measured my height with a pencil, the little squeak on the third stair, the cabinet that never quite closed, no matter how many times Dad promised he'd fix it. I began slowly, one drawer at a time. I repainted the walls soft blue in the living room, like the sky on a clear Atlanta morning. I donated all the furniture Tanya had bought and pulled Mom's old things out of storage. The worn armchair with the yellow stitching, the bookshelf she built with her own 2 hands, the vintage clock that never kept time but always made the kitchen feel alive. I rebuilt not just a home but a legacy. Every weekend, I'd bake, not just pies, but the way Mom used to cookies for the neighbors, muffins for the school staff, banana bread for the kids at the shelter down the street. I opened the windows, let the scent of cinnamon and warm sugar fill the street. People started noticing. Emily, they'd say, "Your house smells like childhood." And I'd smile. Because that was exactly the point. I planted flowers out front, not those sterile, magazine-ready hedges Tanya once obsessed over. Real flowers, wildflowers, hydrangeas, morning glories. The kind that didn't bloom all at once, but when they did, they were unforgettable. The neighborhood changed around me, but this little house, this heartbeat on Halsted Avenue remained steady. Familiar. Whole. Then came the invitation. It was a letter from my father, postmarked from Colorado. I hadn't heard from him in months, not since we parted ways outside that diner, both too full of truth and regret to carry anything else. He wrote, "I see now that silence can be the loudest justice. What you did. I don't know if I would have had the strength. I miss your mother every day, and I see her in the way you walk back into fire without flinching. If you're ever ready, I'd like to visit, not as the man who failed you, but as one who's trying to learn how to be better." I read it twice, then once more, and I didn't respond, not because I hated him, but because the silence felt complete. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't mourning either. I was something new. Balanced, at peace. The following week, I hosted a dinner. Not a grand party, just a gathering of people who had become my patchwork family students who still kept in touch. Neighbors who brought soup when I was sick, and my best friend Marcy who once said, "Girl, you're the quiet kind of hurricane." We sat at the long wooden table, the same one Mom used to polish every Sunday. We passed food, we laughed, we told stories. We didn't raise voices, just glasses. And before dessert, I stood up. I was told once, I said, voice steady, that this wasn't my home. Everyone stilled. I smiled gently. But it was, even when it didn't look like it, even when I was pushed out, even when I had to buy it back with every dime I had. I looked around the table. At some point, I stopped trying to be let in. I just built the door myself. There was silence. Then applause. Then pie. As I washed the dishes that night, I looked out the window. The stars were faint, but they were there. And I whispered something only the walls would hear. "You're safe now." Because for the first time in a long time, so was I. They say revenge is loud. Slammed doors, shouted words, dramatic exits. But I've learned the truth. The best revenge is quiet. It's not the scream, it's the deed. It's not the insult, it's the ownership. It's not showing them you're hurt. It's showing them you healed without needing them. And as I turned off the kitchen light that night, I didn't feel victorious. I felt whole. I climbed the stairs slowly, hand grazing the banister. At the top, I paused, just like I used to as a child. And for once, I didn't look back. Because I wasn't returning to the past. I was finally stepping forward. In my home, my story, my name on the deed, forever.